Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we try to take really specialized, sometimes kind of dense info, like legal property stuff, and just pull out the key things you actually need to know fast. Today, we're diving into something that lots of people are interested in, from first-time buyers maybe to folks looking to downsize, condominiums. But the word condo itself, it covers more than just like the apartment tower everyone pictures, right? Understanding the types of ownership seems crucial.
Oh, absolutely. That's probably the biggest misconception right there. People hear condo and think building type.
Yeah.
But legally, condominium is about the ownership structure. Could be a high-rise, sure, but it could also be a townhouse or even a detached house in some cases.
A detached house. Okay, see, that's already interesting.
Yeah, it defines what part you own outright, what parts you share with everyone else, and crucially, what costs you're sort of locked into sharing down the line.
Okay, so let's set the baseline then. Before we get into all the different variations, what's the fundamental idea? You own your specific unit.
Right. Your private space, your dwelling, you hold the title to that.
And then you share ownership of everything else, the common elements.
Exactly. You jointly own things like the hallways, the roof, the land underneath, whatever's defined as common. And that shared part, that's where you hear this term, inseparable interest.
Inseparable interest. Okay, that sounds pretty technical. What does that actually mean for an owner?
It basically means you can't sell your unit, like your apartment, without also selling your fractional share of all that common stuff. The lobby, the gym, the land. It's all bundled together permanently.
Ah, okay. So you can't just say, I want the apartment, but I don't want to pay for the leaky roof.
Nope, you're in it together. Your responsibility for that shared property is tied to your unit ownership, unless the whole condo corporation dissolves somehow, which is rare.
Got it. So you mentioned earlier there's a really broad split in how this ownership works.
Yeah, the very first fork in the road is freehold versus leasehold. That's the big one.
Freehold and leasehold.
Right. Freehold generally means the condominium corporation owns the land the development sits on. And you, as a unit owner, have that permanent, inseparable interest in that land along with your unit.
Okay. Land is owned by the group.
Leasehold. Well, leasehold completely changes that core idea about the land.
All right, let's stick with freehold for a minute then, since that sounds maybe more like what people expect. You said there are 4 different types within freehold?
That's right. 4 main variations under the freehold umbrella. They all involve the corporation owning the land, giving you that permanent title, but they structure the shared parts differently.
Okay. What's the first one? The most common, I guess.
Yeah, the first is freehold standard condominium. This is really the classic model. Think high-rises, mid-rises, maybe even some townhouse complexes, where basically everything outside your unit's walls is common property.
So in that standard setup, I own the airspace inside my unit.
Pretty much, yeah. The space within the walls.
And then I share ownership and the costs for the hallways, elevators, maybe a pool, the parking garage.
Correct. And the key thing for costs here is that they're usually divided up based on the size of your unit relative to the whole building. It's often called your proportionate share.
So if my unit is, say, 1% of the total building size, I pay 1% of the common bills.
Typically, yes. That's the most straightforward way they allocate those shared expenses in a standard condo. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems logical for, like, an apartment building. But what about, you mentioned detached houses earlier. How does that work if you have separate houses but shared stuff like roads or maybe a community center?
Okay, now you're leading us right into the second type, the one that sometimes sounds a bit weird. The freehold common element condominium.
Common element, okay.
Yeah, and you'll often hear the acronym POTL used for this. It stands for Parcel of Tied Land.
POTL, tied land.
Exactly. This structure is designed specifically for communities where you have individual separate homes, could be detached, semi-detached, but there are significant shared external facilities.
External, like not inside a single building.
Right. Think private roads, maybe a gatehouse, fancy landscaping, a shared park, sometimes even things like a golf course or shared septic systems.
Yeah.
Now, here's the key difference from a standard condo.
Okay.
The POTL Condo Corporation itself, it contains no residential units. 0.
Wait, no units? Then what does it own?
It owns only those common elements, the roads, the park, the golf course, whatever the shared infrastructure is.
So if the corporation doesn't own my house, who does?
You do. In a POTL setup, you own your actual house and the specific piece of land it sits on. It's your freehold property.
Okay, so I own my house and my yard.
Yes, but, and this is the crucial part, That piece of land you own, your house and lot, is legally designated as a parcel of tied land, the POTL.
Tied, meaning?
Meaning your ownership of that private house and land is permanently legally tied to an obligation to belong to the condo corporation and pay your share of the costs for maintaining those common elements, the roads, the gatehouse, etc.
I get it. So the developer uses this condo structure to basically create a mandatory, inescapable homeowners association to make sure everyone always pays for the private roads or the shared pool.
You nailed it. It's a very strong legal tool to ensure those expensive shared amenities are funded forever. You cannot sell your house without transferring that membership and payment obligation for the common elements to the next buyer. That inseparable interest applies to the POTL connection.
That makes the tied land concept much clearer. You can't opt out.
Exactly. It provides a level of certainty for funding shared infrastructure that sometimes regular neighborhood agreements don't quite guarantee.
Okay, that's POTL. Interesting. Now, what about timing? You mentioned one type related to when things are built. Vacant land condos. Why would you set up a condo corporation before the houses are even there?
Right. That's the freehold vacant land condominium. The motivation here is often financial, primarily for the developer.
How so?
It allows them to legally register the condominium corporation and start selling the units, which at this stage are just defined parcels of land before the actual homes are constructed.
So they sell empty lots first.
Essentially, yes. The developer puts in the basic infrastructure, sewers, water lines, maybe rough roads. Then they can sell these service land units to buyers.
And the buyer gets the title to the land.
Correct. They get title to their specific land parcel, which is now a unit in the vacant land condo plan. And that title usually comes with a commitment either from the developer to build a house later or for the buyer to arrange construction according to certain standards.
So the real benefit for the developer is they get cash flow much earlier. They can pass on the infrastructure costs to the individual lot buyers sooner.
Precisely. It helps the developer manage their capital risk and carrying costs. They don't have to finance everything up front until all the houses are built and sold. The buyer's share of common expenses, usually for that initial infrastructure, is then based on the size or specs of their land unit.
Okay, that makes sense from a development perspective. Phased financing.
Yeah, can be quite efficient for large projects.
Which kind of leads into the last freehold type, phased condominiums. That sounds like it's also about timing and development stages.
It is. The freehold phase condominium is specifically designed for large projects built over multiple stages or years. Think maybe a complex of several apartment towers planned over a decade.
Okay. So what happens when you buy into phase one?
Well, you buy your unit, you get your title, just like in a standard condo. But the legal structure, declared upfront, gives the developer the explicit right to add more units or even new common elements in future phases.
Adding them to the same condo corporation.
Yes, that's the key. It all gets folded into the one existing corporation as each phase is completed and registered.
What does that mean for someone who bought early in phase one? Are there pros and cons?
Definitely both. On the plus side, as new phases come online, you get more owners contributing to the overall common expenses. So your individual percentage share might actually go down over time.
Oh, okay. That could be good. Lower fees eventually.
It could be. Sometimes it also means they can afford better amenities in later phases that everyone gets to use. But the potential downsides, well, they're significant too.
Right.
Like living next to a construction site for years, potentially. Noise, dust, disruption.
Right.
And also, your budget might be less predictable. Your percentage share of costs will change with each new phase. Plus, you're relying heavily on the developer's ability to manage this complex, multi-year project and its finances smoothly under one single board. It takes a lot of trust.
Yeah, you're really buying into the developer's long-term plan and competence there.
Very much so.
Okay, so that covers the 4 freehold types. Standard for typical apartments, townhouses, POTL for detached homes tied to shared amenities, vacant land for buying lots pre-construction, and phased for large multi-stage projects. Let's switch gears back to the other main category you mentioned at the start, leasehold.
Right, leasehold.
You said this one throws out the whole idea of owning the land.
It does. Leasehold condominiums are built on land that the developer doesn't own. They've leased the land, usually long-term, from the actual owner.
Who would lease land like that?
Oh, it could be various entities. Sometimes it's government land or land owned by universities, maybe large family estates or First Nations reserves in some areas. The developer builds on this leased ground.
So if I buy a unit in a leasehold condo, I'm not buying any interest in the land itself. What am I buying?
You're buying a leasehold interest in your unit and in the common elements. Essentially, you're buying the right to occupy and use that space for a specific limited period.
Limited period. Okay, that sounds like the absolute crucial difference from freehold, which is permanent ownership.
It absolutely is. Tenure is the critical factor here. Freehold title, in theory, lasts forever. A leasehold interest has an expiry date.
How long are these leases typically?
They can vary quite a bit, but you often see terms ranging from, say, 40 years up to maybe 99 years, sometimes even longer. But the point is, it's finite.
And what happens when that underlying ground lease runs out? Say after 99 years.
When the ground lease expires, the condo corporation's right to be on the land ends, and consequently, the unit owner's right to occupy their unit, it automatically terminates.
Wow. Okay. The right just ends. That feels like a really fundamental difference from how people usually think about buying property, right? As a long-term, potentially multi-generational asset.
It completely is.
So why? Why would anyone choose leasehold, knowing there's an expiration date looming somewhere down the road?
It almost always comes down to the upfront cost, the purchase price.
They're cheaper.
Significantly, usually, because you're not paying for the value of the land itself, which, especially in expensive urban areas, could be a huge chunk of the cost of a property.
Right. The land is often the most valuable part.
Exactly. So with leasehold, buyers get many of the same functional benefits as freehold. They can live there. They can usually sell their leasehold interest. They can renovate, sometimes mortgage it, but without that massive initial capital outlay for the land.
Okay, so you trade permanence for a lower entry price.
That's the trade-off, yes.
Does that make it more popular with certain types of buyers then?
It does tend to appeal to specific demographics. For example, retirees are often a key market.
Why retirees specifically?
Well, think about it. Someone retiring might be on a fixed income or looking to free up capital from a previous home. The lower purchase price of a leasehold unit can be very attractive.
Right, less capital tied up.
Exactly. And if the remaining lease term is, say, 30 or 40 years, that might perfectly align with their expected time frame for needing the property. The fact that the lease expires in, say, 50 years might not be a major concern for their personal planning horizon.
So they get the lifestyle and the location maybe without the full cost of freehold ownership, and the end date of the lease isn't really a factor for them personally.
That's often the calculation, yeah. They trade that very long-term land ownership, which they might not need, for lower immediate costs.
That financial logic makes a lot of sense in that context. Lower price, predictable shared costs, just for a defined period.
And keep in mind, the common expenses in a leasehold condo will also include the ground rent payments that the condo corporation has to make to the actual landowner. That gets passed through to the unit owners.
Okay, so that's an extra component in the monthly fees compared to freehold.
It is. Part of your condo fee is basically rent for the land.
Got it. Okay, this has been super helpful. Let's try and quickly recap the 5 types for everyone listening.
Sure.
So you've got standard freehold, your typical high-rise or townhouse complex, own your unit, share the internal common stuff, costs based on unit size. Pretty straightforward.
Right. Then freehold common element, or POTL. You own your detached house and land, but it's legally tied forever to paying for shared external things like private roads or a clubhouse.
Can't escape those fees.
All right.
Then freehold vacant land. You're essentially buying a service lot first in a planned community before houses are built, often to help the developer's financing.
Yep. And freehold phased. Buying into one part of a big project knowing the developer has the right to add more buildings or amenities to your same condo corp later on. Construction and changing fees are possibilities.
Right. And finally, leasehold. You buy the right to use your unit for a set number of years, maybe 40, maybe 99, but you never own the land, and your right ends when the ground lease expires. Lower upfront cost is the main appeal.
That covers the main structures, yeah. The key thing across all of them, except perhaps pure leasehold, is that concept of shared ownership and shared costs for common elements, whether internal or external.
And even with the POTL, where you own your house outright, you're still financially tied to that shared infrastructure.
Permanently tied. You can't sell the house without selling that obligation too.
Which brings up maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. We've talked about these different structures. Think about the POTL model versus the leasehold model. 2 very different approaches. Right. With the POTL, you get the satisfaction, maybe, of owning your house and the land it sits on, true freehold. But you are permanently locked into paying potentially significant fees for shared infrastructure, like those private roads or that golf course, forever. You can't decouple it.
That obligation never goes away as long as you own the house.
Compare that to leasehold.
Yeah.
You know up front, your right to be there has an end date.